Aww, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for part number 2 of Day 9 Daily number 389, where we learn to be a better gamer. Now, you all the way over there might be wondering why we're spending so much time on this Protoss opening. First of all, it's beautiful. But then you say, but I thought it was about Zenio. We're going to get there soon. First, we're going to admire how beautiful this play is, how much it throws Zerg off, how many problems it creates for Zerg, and then we're still going to see how Zenio pulls it off. Great. Did want to note that, of course, I did just tweet about the Jinx shirts and the code that gets you free shirts at twitter.com/day9tv. The promotion only runs for the next 3 days, 16th, 17th, and 18th of December. Ha 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 ha. So everything's wonderful. In part 1, we looked at this great opening by Wulong Storm, where he does not actually get that many gateways or spend that many chrono boosts on his units. It's not about getting a bigger army, or it's not about doing the original play in a bigger way. It's about doing it in a faster way. We saw 5 chrono boosts go down on that cybernetics core to get that warp gate up extra quickly, which enabled him to put massive zealot only pressure on and buy time to do this jazz. 4 warp gates which just killed off this expansion, and 8 more warp gates en route. Zealot High Templar being pooped out all over the place, and things look pretty bad. This is such a sweet play. The one thing I don't want you to do, that I actually would hate if you did, is to attack with these Void Rays and lose your comfortable position with them. We're seeing Wulong Storm jump into huge aggression. I'm going to say the number one mistake Wulong Storm does this game is he does not upgrade out of this Forge ever. He never upgrades out of the Forge, which is awful, which is the worst thing that you can do. So right now, Wulong Storm is going to go ahead and take this expansion. See how absolutely delightfully lovely that was? He just put on massive pressure, has this ridiculous mixture. Like, what the hell really do you make against that? Hydras? I mean, sure, but Zealots with speed and Archons are going to be quite effective against that, and the Void Rays are good as it is. And if he gets too many Roaches, well, Roaches are not very good against that many Void Rays. And of course, we're going to see Wulong Storm back up, get some Storm, as you may expect. And the one thing that I think is most critical about this army is that there is not a Stalker in sight. These are the most expensive units, and they're cute. They're the cute, strong, sly unit because they're air. Air units always create this kind of, well crap, half my units can't shoot it dilemma. So this is the real mess with the composition style unit, but everything else here, high on gas, low on minerals. High on minerals, no gas. High on gas, low on minerals. Every single one of these is only expensive in one of the resources. Stalkers are expensive in both of the resources. It's kind of about the ratio, like where it's about like a little over 2 to 1 between minerals and gas in terms of how quickly you get it. Things that have about that ratio are just pretty damn expensive units in general. So now he gets this expansion up, so oh my god, do we feel so totally freaking boned as the Zerg player. This is the point where I'm going to stop and I'm going to swap to the Zenio cam. We're actually going to rewind and look at much of the first half of the game. Now, we are exactly halfway through this game. It ends up being a little over a 30-minute game, and we're at the 15-minute and 38-second mark. If you just watch the first half of the game, I would describe myself, or if you can tell, if I'm Wulong Storm, I'm going to say I'm in the lead, right? I'm getting my expansion up, getting cannons. I have an army of doom. Honestly, I think my next step is going to be get +2, get blink, and progress as normal. That's probably going to be my follow-up. I might do another round of Zealot Archon just to be totally kick-ass. But I'm trying to think if there's any way in which I wouldn't think I'm way the hell ahead, right? But look at the food count. Look at that. Isn't that remarkable that Protoss actually is not ahead? And if I actually come to the units tab, we see that the Zerg player is doing decently on drones, but still has a pretty substantial army of Roaches and Hydras right there. And that is indeed the force that we are going to be talking about. The nice Roach Hydraulisk Force. Already has his expanders up. And what we are now going to back up and do is an examination of LiquidZenio and why he is so good. What I want to throw out there is, right now, is we're going to see Zenio set himself up for flexibility with the Roach Hydralisk composition. He's just going to be getting Roaches and Hydras with different skews. This is what was most interesting to me about the game, is sometimes we get more Roaches, sometimes we get more Hydras, sometimes we're balanced, sometimes we're not balanced at all, sometimes we're even throwing some Zerglings in there. But what enables our Zerg buddy to do this is that he's very responsible about getting up a lot of upgrades, so that way he can enable himself that flexibility, and he's very aggressive. He's very aggressive with these forces that he has. It's easy to go into defense mode, but not Zenio. Sets himself up for flexibility, and then proceeds to be aggressive as he can be. So the opening we're going to go through pretty quickly. I think that the examination of this opening is much more enhanced by watching yesterday's daily. Daily number 388, where we talk about Stefano's opening and see Stefano's very fast tech up to the layer. Here's the spawning pool. Already going down. Let's relate it to some of the timings that we saw yesterday in Stefano's game. In Stefano's game, he did get this early geyser and got this early speed. Delayed this hatch by a little bit. But at this point, 3 minutes and 30 seconds for hatch number 1. Bingo, dingo, wanamingo. Second queen coming up. We saw Stefano also do that. But we saw Stefano's build this hatch quite late, at around 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And we see that Zenio has plenty of money to be able to do this, but doesn't. Let me actually just point out when he had the money to be able to do that. He had it around 4 minutes and 40 seconds. See, he's just about to grace that. And there's the vomiting larva. Lift up with the skirt. Yep, there's literally no other place where Zenio could have spent that money. You can get this hatch up about 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Still 45 seconds. 45 seconds before the opponent. Or, not 45 seconds before the opponent. I knew there was something wrong with that. 45 seconds before Stefano ended up throwing down his. Just a little pre-prep work from our good buddy friend Zerg buddy. Killing off these rocks. Zenio doing everything normal. Building a lot of drones. Building a lot of drones. Vomiting, building a lot of drones. There's the hatch going down. This, I guess, bothered me a little bit because we're at 5:45. It's like a full minute after he normally would be able to get his stuff down. So this, I thought, was a little bit weird. But that's fine. He's moving on through. And it's at this point that we saw Stefano begin to put dudes back in his gas geyser, start to really ratchet up the production of his layer. But still nothing but drones being produced, as expected. Drone, 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 want to have a lot of economy. Drone, drone, drone. Drones and drones. Yep, losing the zealot. I would say for future reference, if you want to poke and just check to see if +1's being researched, which you can because that's the way it looks, then this can be a good indicator to you to throw down an earlier than usual Roach Warren. Because, you know, +1 timing attack is generally coming. We don't have Zergling speed at all. We see these two Zealots moving out. We have to respond. Oh no! I think it would have been reasonable to say, if he did see that +1 going down, to have thrown down 6 or 7 Roaches. Maybe 4 or 5 is reasonable. But the important thing is not too many Roaches. Just enough to deal with the first round of quick warp-ins. But these are sort of after-the-fact thoughts. The important thing is that while in autopilot build-only drone mode, and while preparing for some sort of big rush-in of air units, he gets the usual 1 Spore Crawler here and says, well, my main is linked with creep, so I can just get my 2 Queenies together. This already kind of surprised me, this +1 armor upgrade, but this is going to help make our units much stronger against Zealots, which get +2 for that upgrade. The most significant thing in this battle already is how Zenio is being very careful not to let his drones die. They're not moving right now, but at the same time they're not being attacked. Let's watch and wait and see what happens when they first get attacked. Come on. Come on. Whack away at the zealots. Come on. Instantly moves when they start taking damage. Like, literally no hesitation at all. That's the first big thing that I liked quite a bit. Also, in these situations where you are under a lot of pressure, be aware that you're probably going to end up throwing down an extra macro hatchery. That will just end up being your distribution of resources pretty frequently. And this is one of the key parts, logic-wise, in the game. Very often, when you get into an early battle, earlier than you thought you would, you have to make the roaches and lings to stay alive. Simple. But what happens to your economy as a result? Well, your layer and all your other tech is delayed. Layer and all other techs cost a lot of money. So suddenly your ability to spend money is delayed. Let me make that explicit. You want to get Roach Speed and Burrow. Let's just say those two upgrades, Roach Speed and Burrow. If you delay your layer, you can't buy Roach Speed and Burrow right now. So that extra amount of money that you should be spending on those resources is just suddenly in your bank. So what the hell do you do with it? This almost always happens when your tech gets delayed. You end up with this huge swell of money. Anytime you're under pressure, be aware that it's probably going to be time to build an extra macro hatchery. And a lot of times people do the after-the-fact realization about the macro hatchery, but I really think that you should do the before-the-fact, where right when you're getting attacked and you start building these units, plop a fourth hatch down, no problem. Because not only is your money working out kind of that way, but hell, if he commits to a huge attack, it's completely reasonable that your layer was late. If he did a huge attack right now, you don't need Roach Speed quickly. You need units out right now, because his follow-up attack is going to be way delayed. So your Roach Speed timing is going to be just fine. Everyone in chat is talking about the SOPA bill. I'm like trying to focus on the game, and everyone's like, Day 9's going to lose his job, man. Everything is going to actually get burned to the ground. Unfortunately, the best I can do for you at this point is to cry a little bit with you and to continue doing the daily. So I'm actually gonna turn this monitor off. Notice how this side of my face is gonna get darker because that monitor is not on, and I'm just gonna turn it on briefly to make sure that we did transition back to the game. Jerks. Talking about the Sopu. So hey, he ends up defending it pretty much a-okay. Oh, what a breather. Phew, we ended up staying alive. We go back to building drones. Our drone count will be delayed, but this fortunately planted macro hatchery is going to save our souls. It's going to be so freaking helpful. And then we see the two Void Rays coming up. They're coming up. Be really careful with the placement of your Spore Crawlers, because I think that this came back to haunt our good friend Zenio. This is good Spine Crawler placement. This is not the best Spore Crawler placement. And it was impossible for this to get into the best position. Overreacting at your isolated expansion is generally pretty important. Getting way the hell more Spine Crawlers than you think you really, really need. So here is these two things. Remember how before I talked about the flexibility that Zenio is going to set up for himself? Here is the flexible elements. Getting these upgrades en masse very early. Getting this fourth hatch as an emergency, holy crap, I need to stay alive, really early. And then, of course, getting the speed and spines up very early. We see Zenio do the most logical thing to pull back here, but still note that there's really not that many workers that have been killed off. Given this huge investment that has gone on by Wulong, Zenio has lost a remarkably small amount of drones. Be aware of that.
Our forces are under attack.
So, quite logically, we're going to see plenty of Hydras pop out, but I must emphasize to you that the Roaches are some of the biggest heroes in this entire force engagement. And right off the bat, what does Zenio do? He starts to get aggressive. A general technique that you're going to want to see is, as the Roaches are starting to get finished off, leave the Roaches to fight, retreat with the Hydralisks. Zerglings and Hydras being rallied up to the force. Yeah, still getting the extra range upgrade up. Still continuing to use all these extra hatcheries. And these decisions are pretty straightforward for our Zerg player. He just needs to get these air units up. So, I think we're just going to go for another 2 or 3 more minutes before we do the next break. But the biggest mistake I think you can make against air is overproducing Hydras. You're going to need to get a lot of roaches in, and as we see our Zerg player Zenio begin to move out for the push, there's a big theme I want you to note. Aggression plus expanding. Doing those two things a lot. We're not going to see infestation pits or spires or much variety in any of the rest of the buildings. But aggression plus expanding is an extremely solid way to play out Roach Hydra, just as a general technique. Aggression and expanding. So here's our first big engagement. Again, this is why I really love this play by Wulong Storm. It's so ridiculously good, and we can clean up on the air side. Now, this is not actually that big of a problem. I mean, obviously we don't want to die off right now, but maintaining control of the ground is the most important thing to do against an air player. Right now, our entire livelihood as the Zerg player has consisted entirely of defending and feeling totally screwed off. We don't know that this expansion is up and running right now. We're really worried about this one. And there's any number of transitions that our Protoss opponent could be planning for us. But again, the big thing that we're going to see out of this Zerg player, look at this, not getting these geysers, expanding and aggression. Staying relatively low on the geyser count, just getting 4. This is, I think, one of the biggest lessons that can be learned from this daily and the Stefano daily yesterday. Almost all the big stages of a Zerg's gameplay can be defined by how many geysers he has going. We're going to see our Zerg player sitting fairly passively, or not passively, sitting fairly content to just have 4 geysers. Not going to be getting these ones, not going to be getting these extra ones up, not trying to go for any sort of big tech play right now. Zerg does not know where he is at right now. And when you're in that position as a Zerg player, or as any player, one of the best things to do is just attack. And to try to do these pokes at the expansion. Now, what Zerg should do is take this out and just back right on up. And that's what he does. And right when you do that, you should absolutely go check for the other expansions. If your worst fear, you've just managed to kind of go, oh, alright, cool. Double frickin' check your worst fear, man. Double frickin' check it, man. Active upgrades, yeah. Really active upgrades. We started with this +1 really early, immediately got the +1 attack, immediately got the +2 attack, and now we're coming back for +2 armor. This is helping to give this flexibility. It's not just attack upgrades. This armor I'm starting to kind of like quite a bit more. And he's going to do these little pokes to sort of see where he is at. Compositionally, now that he's getting these Zerglings and Hydras, these Hydras are not really going to be able to participate in this battle. This is sort of just like these units really going at it. So you're noticing the general retreat-themed movement from these units and just expanding behind. Sticking relatively low on geysers, just 4. We're going to be basically going Roaches or Ling Hydra. Roaches or Ling Hydra. Just again and again and again and again. This angle of attack is a little bit tenuous, but I think it's remarkable to note that at this point in time, even though the Protoss player did all that damage, simply by being aggressive and stepping out into the fray, and making sure that we first got a lot of Hydras to deal with the air, but then that we maintained ground control with these Roaches. We didn't lose that. That now we're suddenly pushing back pretty hard. I think the hardest lesson to learn against air is to overbuild Roaches. That is one of the best ways to deal with a Protoss that has a pretty good-sized air force going on. A lot of Roaches. When we come back in part number 3, we're just going to briefly whip through a lot of the end game, talk about all the great army positionings that Zenio does, and how he's able to pull back in the match. Woohoo! And then I'm going to go get Korean barbecue for dinner.